Have you ever done something that you thought was a good idea, but it turned out badly? They told me if I joined the cult, I wouldn't have to pay any taxes, okay? Sometimes the things we think are beneficial turn out to be anything but, and this applies to writing as well. Today, we're going to talk about a few things that you think are good for your writing, but might not actually be good for your writing. Things that make it seem like they will help you progress and build your skills when in actuality they won't do that. All right, first potentially actually bad thing for your writing, reading. Reading will benefit your writing in many ways. You will learn what works and what doesn't. You will get exposure and inspiration from different ideas. There's no shortage of benefits that reading can provide to a writer. Reading becomes a hindrance, though, in some specific situations. If reading novels discourages you because it makes you feel incapable of a writer, if you find yourself comparing yourself to the authors that you read and saying stuff like, I'll never write something this good as you weep onto the pages of your favorite author's work, then that's a problem. Reading can be discouraging if you don't manage the reactions to it and if you let comparison stifle your drive to write. Obviously, if you're reading so much that it reduces your available writing time, that's a problem. If you're producing less writing because you're spending so much time reading, then that's not good. The inspiration that comes from reading can also be too much. I found when I first started getting serious about writing, I would read a specific novel and then really want to write something that was like that novel. This was great because it inspired me to write and it let me try a whole bunch of different things, but it was bad because it made it harder to focus on one project and I very rarely finished any project. I just kept jumping around to different things, which is not a great thing to do. Reading without purpose is also a problem, mostly because I think it cuts out some of the benefits that you get from reading. To get the maximum benefits from reading as a writer, you need to consciously be thinking about what you've read on at least some level. When you really like or dislike a certain novel, you need to think about why. You need to examine why you like or don't like something. Reading just purely for enjoyment has benefits to a writer, but you have to go deeper than that to truly get the most out of reading. Next potentially bad thing, praise. I think for anyone to survive a process as soul-crushing as writing, you need some level of praise, some level of encouragement, some sense from other people that you are making progress and developing skill. People are wired to be social creatures, and getting signs from other people that we're doing something good is probably the best way to ensure that we keep doing that thing. But praise can backfire in a few ways. Obviously, if people are gushing over writing that objectively isn't that good, then that's bad. Your mother will think you have a lot of talent and probably love what you write, but she's your mother. She has to say that. Well, some people's mothers tell them that. Mine. A much more dangerous effect of praise, though, is when it goes to your head, when it starts to feed the ego. This can happen even if you've legitimately done something that requires skill, when you've demonstrated your writing abilities and have actually written something that's truly deserving of praise. Bad things happen when you start to see yourself as a good writer rather than seeing yourself as someone who wrote something good. The ego builds up this wall that will prevent you from progressing further. You're already great, so why would you need to change? This can turn you into an asshole quite easily, and it sort of clouds your vision. You will no longer be able to accept genuine criticism that would enable you to improve because in your mind, you don't need to improve. You will reject this advice because accepting that advice means accepting that you aren't already great. Building up beliefs about your capability as a writer, even if those are positive beliefs, can further stifle your progress. They will blind you to the problems that still exist in your writing. Writing is one of those things that you can always improve at, and you always need to be focused on improving. Praise, when it feeds the ego, is a bad thing for a writer because it will stop you from improving and turn you into a jerk as well. Next, potentially bad thing for your writing, criticism. A lot of what I just said about praise applies to criticism, but in reverse. So just go rewatch the praise part of the video backwards, I guess. Part of making good writing is knowing what's currently making the writing bad. You can't just double down on your strengths, you need to address your weaknesses. Critique is how you flush out those weaknesses. When other people read your writing and point out what doesn't work or where there are flaws, that will help you improve as a writer, assuming that the flaws that they're pointing out are legitimate and everything like that. Now, there's an ego aspect here too. Critique can make you feel bad about your writing, which can discourage you from making progress and actually working to fix the problems within it. Again, go watch the praise portion of the video in reverse. I promise it's not a secretly encoded message that will hypnotize you into joining a cult. That message has already been delivered. Beyond just the issues with ego and discouragement, though, critique can still be bad, even though it seems like a good thing. A dirty little secret of critique is that it's just one person's opinion, or possibly a few people's opinions. No matter how good an editor or a critique partner is, they are ultimately just one voice. There's a chance that that voice is right, but there's also a chance that it isn't. The advice you get to improve your writing is always hampered by the sample size, the number of people who are giving you that advice. The only real fix for this is to just get more critique from more people, which you should. Ideally, more critique partners is better up to a certain point. But you're always just getting a sample. There's no way to know the truth. Unless you've got a completely representative sample of people who have read your work, it's really hard to objectively say that the advice you're getting is the proper advice to make the most improvement in your writing. And that's setting aside the fact that 10 different people are going to have 10 different opinions and point out 10 different types of problems, which means having large groups of critique partners makes it impossible to just digest and actually use the information that they're giving you, but that's an entirely separate issue. Critique is great when it moves you in the right direction, but knowing whether it is actually moving you in that direction can be difficult. And if it isn't, then critique and criticism could actually be negative for your writing. And the last thing that could potentially be bad for your writing, editing. No, wait, revision. No, editing. No, revision. Editing. Hemingway famously said that the first draft of anything is equivalent to what comes out the back end of a pig. And he wasn't talking about bacon, because bacon technically comes from the underside of the pig. Becoming a good writer is less about getting good at writing and more about getting good at revision and editing. Polishing and decrapifying your work is a critical step. But revision brings with it its own set of problems. Making a good piece of writing better is not the same as making a piece of writing different. Replacing bad with good is good. Replacing bad with another version of bad is just another version of bad. I did a whole video a while ago about the negative potential of revision, so there's not really a need to revise the topic in any great detail here. But revision that's not guided by genuine problems, revision that lacks focus, or revision that's done when you're still too deep within the project is problematic. Your familiarity with the work can also lead you to cut potentially good things for no good reason. A scene might be really interesting the first time that you read it, but after you've read it a dozen times, after it's been through a few rounds of revision, you potentially might want to change that scene even though it doesn't really need a change. The problems that you see with that scene are just because you've read it a dozen times and you're super familiar with it. Someone who isn't super familiar with it might actually find that scene really good. And if you change it to something else, you might actually be weakening your novel. Ego and our own denseness can also hide potential problems from us, leading to things that get missed in revision entirely. Revision is definitely something you should do. It's kind of hard to avoid, but when done the wrong way, it can actually be harmful instead of helpful. Speaking of helpful things, I hope this video was helpful. So there you have it. If there is anything that seems like it would be good for your writing, but is actually bad for your writing, I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.